All right. So again, welcome everyone to post-high school planning, postgraduate planning for the class of 2023-24. And I am going to stop sharing my screen, Michael, and turn the mic and the computer over to you.
Thank you very much, Donna, for the great introduction and for the invitation to be here tonight. And I am going to share my screen. Just a second. Okay, it's always great to be here at Upper Dublin. Wish we were in person. I've been here so many times over the course of my admission career, but this is great because it is the first time that I'm doing this as, once again, being a resident of Upper Dublin and being a parent with kids in the district as well, not in the high school quite yet, but in the district. So I've been asked to talk a little bit about the concept of fit. And I think it's always good to start with the definition of what that exactly means in terms of the college search. So when we talk about fit, it's when a college is a good match for a student's wants and needs. And it really breaks down into, the way I see it, 3 different areas: academically, culturally, and financially. And they're all very important. When we talk about academic fit, some of this will be obvious. Does the school have the academic programs that you're interested in? The class size, think about how you do your best learning. Are you someone who really likes being in a small discussion-based classroom? Are you someone that wants to be in a large auditorium with 500 people, pull your baseball hat down and be anonymous toward the back, or somewhere in between? Academic resources. What kind of support networks and resources are there that are going to support your style of learning when you do find the college or university that you're going to end up going to? The admission statistics. How does your level of academic achievement and your performance at Upper Dublin High School, how does that match up with the typical admission profile for these colleges and universities that you're considering? And any pre-professional or non-traditional offerings. Are you looking for perhaps an early assurance program, a BS MD early assurance program, or a combined undergrad and law degree program, or anything that's sort of out of the ordinary that may be a great fit for your specific interest, but may not be something that every single school out there is going to offer? When we talk about cultural fit, just like real estate, location, location, location. And that could mean a lot of different things. Do you want to stay close to home? Certainly in this area, we might not get the press for being a college town that somewhere like Boston does, but the Philadelphia area has 250,000 college students and 60 or so different colleges within the city and the immediate surrounding areas. But do you want to be somewhere like a major metropolitan area? Do you want to be in the city? Do you want to be in the suburbs? Do you want to be somewhere rural? Are there certain things that you want to have access to? Are you someone that needs to be near a certain kind of place where you can get your hair done, or certain kind of hobby that you're interested in doing, or certain kind of concerts that you like to see? I mean, those are all things that play into the location. And again, student population, we talked about the class size, but student population, not just in the classes, but overall. There are some schools out there that are smaller than Upper Dublin. They're just a few hundred students. And then there are some places where there could be 10, 20, 30, 40, 50,000 or more undergrads on that campus, and lots of places in between. So thinking about, again, what's going to be the best situation for you and your learning style and all the other things that you want to get out of going to college. Extracurricular activities. I mean, college would be really easy. This process would be at least a lot easier if all you had to figure out was, I want to go to a school with a good program in the major that I'm looking for, right? But you all want more out of it. Students want more out of the process than that. Parents want their students to end up at a place that's more than that. So what kind of things are there outside of the traditional four walls of the classroom experience? Because education is not just going to be about what goes on in the classrooms and in the labs when you go to college, but what are the other things that you're going to get involved in, whether it's a sport that you play, whether it is community service or civic engagement, whether you are a visual or performing artist, but you want to make sure that all those things that you're used to doing and that you want to continue, that there's an avenue for them when you get to college. Political leaning and political involvement as well. You know, wherever you fall on the political spectrum, that may be a consideration when looking at colleges or universities. Not that you need to go somewhere where everyone thinks like you, but you want to have enough of a sense of what the culture is politically surrounding that place and know where you see yourself in it, or if you don't see yourself in it. And then of course, unfortunately, finances are a part of the puzzle as well. College is absolutely an investment, right? So we're talking about a very important decision that's going to contribute to academic and intellectual growth and also personal growth, but it's usually not free, right? So we're talking about an investment in your future. So you want to be smart and do your research about that. And it's also important though to understand that there's a difference between the sticker price and a true cost of attendance. And I just had a friend from college reach out to me asking about their daughter looking at colleges and mentioned that college X was kind of pricey. And what I said was, well, you don't really know what a college or university is going to cost until you've done a couple of things: applied and gained admission, and then applied for and received financial aid. Only then will you know exactly what it's going to cost. Unless you know you're not going to qualify for need-based financial aid at all, and you're not applying for financial aid, and you're applying to a school that doesn't give any merit scholarships, then you can know that the sticker price is the cost. But most people are not paying the sticker price because they're going to either get some type of need-based financial aid or perhaps some type of merit-based financial aid. So it's a great approach, I think, to apply to a wide range of places with varying different price points in terms of sticker price. But if they're a good fit, apply for them. If you gain admission, then you can see what it's actually going to cost you. There are times where a school with a higher sticker price can actually be a more affordable option than a school with a lower sticker price, if that school is more generous with financial aid. So the conversation shouldn't just focus around sticker price, but also what's the actual affordability when you know the true cost? What's the actual affordability for you and your family? And parents in particular, you want to have these conversations with your students up front and be very real and realistic with them about what is in the budget, what you can actually afford. It's better to have that up front than to have the conversation at the other end of the process where, you know, I've seen it, where students gain admission into a place and unfortunately, regardless of how much they want to go there, it's just not a financially viable option, but the students didn't realize that until the end of the process. And here is a chart from US News and World Report, which I don't always like to give a lot of publicity to, but once a year, I do like to clip this statistic. This is looking at the average tuition and fees for their ranked schools, of which there's at least several hundreds. And so you see for private schools, just over 38,000, for public out of state, which when you're applying and going to a public institution out of state, there's almost always a higher charge than in-state residents, 22,689, and then public in-state, just over 10,000. Now, these are averages. And of course, the one thing about this college process is averages don't really mean anything if they don't apply to you specifically, but just to give you a sense of the kind of investment that's out there. And then it's also important to know the different types of colleges and universities. I mentioned earlier, being in the Philadelphia area, we have all the different types of schools that I'm about to mention. You can find them all within And if not an hour drive, certainly a 2-hour drive from Upper Dublin High School. Public universities, when we talk about public schools, there's some kind of state or government ownership. It may be city ownership in the case of the CUNY schools up in New York City. But they're either owned by the state or they have significant funding from the state or city or some type of governmental agency. Private universities are not state-owned. They still may receive some perks from government, tax breaks or funding for certain things, but they are not owned by any governmental agency. For-profit, we're talking about schools here where most public and private schools are operating as nonprofits, and any profit margins they get are going back into the educational process. For-profit schools are owned by a company or a business, and they may take some of that revenue and spend it on non-educational purposes. So their main goal is using education in order to generate income. Liberal arts colleges, they tend to be smaller. They tend to focus on undergraduate education as well. So compared to the research that you find at universities, which also educate undergraduate students, but they may also have grad programs and professional programs and do a lot of different research on campus. Community colleges are usually public schools that are tertiary education. They usually offer associates and or 2-year degrees or certifications. Now there are some community colleges where you can actually get 4-year degrees as well, but the focus is primarily on associate degrees and certifications and programs. And then oftentimes students will transfer after that associates into a 4-year college to complete their bachelor's degree. Women's colleges, of course, these are places that focus primarily on educating women. HBCUs, or historically Black colleges, are just like it sounds, places that were created historically to educate Black Americans. And we have several of them, again, really close to Upper Dublin, including Cheney University, which is the oldest HBCU in the country. And then Hispanic serving institutions are schools that have a federal designation of an HSI, meaning they educate at least 25% of students who are Hispanic or Latinx in background. Not too many, or if any, 4-year schools that fit this designation in Pennsylvania, but nearby in New Jersey, there's places like Fairleigh Dickinson and St. Peter's and Montclair State, and a few in New York as well. Some tools and resources for finding a good fit. First, I'm going to give a big plug to my friends in the guidance office there at Upper Dublin. Like Donna said, all pros, all great to work with, know so much, but also are very well connected with folks on the other side. And so know who to pick up the phone and call or send an email to at different colleges and universities to get the answers if they don't already know them, which there's a great chance they probably will. But college websites are also a really great place. There's a lot of different resources out there, but I always think there's something to going directly to the source. You know, going to that first page of a college or university's website, you can find out a lot because there's only one front page, right? So you can see, well, what are they choosing to prioritize? What are they putting out there as the first point of contact? What aren't they sharing? And then you want to go beyond the first page as well, but even just going to the first page will tell you a lot about a college or university. Net price calculators. When we were talking about pricing and affordability, well, all colleges are required to have net price calculators somewhere on their website. This went back to the Obama administration that made this happen, but basically with the net price calculator, you plug in certain numbers in data like your income, and sometimes they may ask about a student's academic performance, tax information, but you plug in these figures and it will give you an estimate of what you could expect in terms of a financial aid package. Now, all the calculators aren't built equally, and some are more complex than others, and they're only ever going to be as good as the information that you put into them. But it's a really good way to just get a general sense of what you may be able to expect. It's not a guarantee, but you still have to fill out all the appropriate forms and apply and do the official process. But it's a great tool to kind of just get a sense of what you may be looking at for each college or university. A big future is a site that's run by the College Board, the folks that bring you the lovely SAT test, but it is actually a great resource where you can search for colleges by academic program and location and lots of other factors. So I think it's a really great resource to maybe hear about some names that you don't already know about. There's thousands of schools out there, and there's some really great ones that may not be on your radar. So it's a really great way to kind of find out some information about lots of different places. College Navigator is a site that's run by the National Center for Education Statistics, and has a lot of great information about outcomes, pricing, and lots of other factors that would be of interest to you as you're searching through colleges. So it's another great website. Fairtest.org. Now, there are a lot of colleges that are test optional, and some that are even test blind in the wake of the pandemic, and probably will be for this year and at least next year. Then we'll have to see if some revert back to asking for tests. But fairtest.org has been around for quite some time and has a list of schools that they keep that tell you places that you don't need to submit an SAT or an ACT or standardized testing as part of the application process. So before the pandemic, during the pandemic, and after the pandemic, SATs and ACTs are not a necessary part of the process. They may be for some schools, but there's options out there where you don't have to take those tests if that's not something you're interested in doing. Of course, visiting colleges is great. And again, I'll mention, being in the Philadelphia area, we have all the types here, right? So we have places like Westchester University as a public institution. We have places like Drexel University, a large private R1 research institution. We have great liberal arts colleges like Haverford and Ursinus and Swarthmore, and a place like Bryn Mawr College, which is a women's college and a liberal arts college. We have historically Black colleges like Cheney. You can go a little bit further and go visit Lincoln. So you have all the different prototypes right here. And so even if you're not interested in staying in the area, it may be worth venturing out to just see what the type of school is, right? Going up to Penn State, if you want a big public flagship university, but you don't want to stay in state, but maybe you go to Penn State and see if you like it first before you buy an airplane ticket to go out to Ann Arbor or Madison, Wisconsin. And now, of course, we're all really good at doing virtual visits as well. So even if you're not physically able to visit a place, you can hop on your computer and do a tour, do an information session. We broadcast all of our open houses lately now, and we're not the only ones doing that. So you can visit even if you aren't able to actually physically go out there and visit these campuses. College fairs, of course, are another great thing. And again, we used to do them in person quite a lot, not as many right now in the last couple of years, but they're starting to do more in person. But we also have lots of college fairs that you can do online, including some that are run by NACAC, which is the National Association for College Admission Counseling. And then I want to keep things moving along in the interest of time, but I think this is a really important thing. I'm talking a lot about different resources that are out there and different people that you can talk to, like the folks in guidance, like myself and folks across all other campuses. But I always think it's critically important for students to start with themselves before reaching outside to get information. But it's really a great time for self-reflection, to pause a little bit, even in the busy world of being a junior or senior or a ninth grader or a 10th grader for that matter, at Upper Dublin. But think about, why do you even want to engage in this process? Why do you want to go to college? What are you looking to get out of it? And the answer shouldn't just be like, well, we're in Upper Dublin and that's what we do. That's true for most students, but there's different reasons and motivations for everybody. So each student should think about why they specifically want to go to college and what they're looking to get out of the experience. Is it purely intellectual? Is it purely pre-professional? Is it to get out of the area and meet different people? Is it because you just want to get a credential for a certain career path, or a combination of a lot of those different things? But once you have a good answer for what your motivations are, that is going to help guide you to places that will be a really good fit for you. So I know that was a lot of information in a little bit of time, but hopefully those are a few things to reflect on that'll help you get off to a really great start on your journey, which is an exciting one. And the last thing I'll say is, for both parents and students, I know that we're living in stressful times. I know that this process can be stressful as well, but it's really important to keep fun at the center of this as well. You know, spending time together as a family. These places are amazing places. There's so many great colleges and universities out there with so many great ideas floating around, so many amazing people to meet. And so it can be fun going to visit. And especially if you know that you go to Upper Dublin High School, it's one of the best high schools, not just in the state, it's one of the best in the entire country. Very few people have access to the kind of education that you have there. And I didn't appreciate it when I was a student there and graduated in the early 90s, but now 23 years working in college admissions, I understand just how special of a place is. I think it's even better than it was when I was there. So you're already winning as long as you put in the work and do the research and listen to the experts that you have in the school, you're going to be fine. So just try to focus on having a little bit of fun along with all the other tasks that you have going on. Thanks, friends.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you for your guidance, for your advice, for your leadership.
Thank you for having me.
We'll have you back again.
I hope next time it'll be back in the building.
Oh, I can't wait. We all can't wait to see you in person. We all can't wait. I'm going to move forward with the agenda. We have a couple more short presentations, and then we'll get to the Q&A section of the presentation. I know, I think someone added a question in the chat. You're welcome to do that, but we'll get to questions at the end. Okay. All right, next up, I'm going to turn the mic over to two of our school counselors, Mrs. Saxon and Mr. Taddeo.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. I'm so grateful that you're with us. Of course, I totally wish we were in the auditorium doing this in person, but we just appreciate everyone that's here tonight. I am going to be doing a quick overview with Mr. Taddeo on Naviance and what it is. We're going to talk for a minute about how to get parent accounts, and we are going to go through the timeline of how the counselors work with your students using Naviance and all these wonderful features that the program provides. Next slide. Okay, so what is Naviance? You know, the overview is that you can access it from any computer. Our students have their easy login through Clever, and we have sent them all the instructions on how to access Naviance, and it's a quick Google login. We love this program that we subscribe to. We've been using it for many years. It's a great program to help students with their career and postgraduate planning. So there's so many opportunities for students these days. I would say more options than ever. But like Mr. Keaton said, a lot of our students do choose to go on to 2- and 4-year schools. And we start with Naviance at an early time in high school and 9th grade because we're trying to connect them to their options in the real world and what's coming. We don't get to keep them forever. We know that they're going to graduate. And so while they're with us, we're trying to give them as many tools and give them as many connections to the next phase of life. And so we do lessons each year, and I'm going to go into that, but also parents also have an account. So you are welcome to reach out to Mrs. Hibbert, one of our guidance secretaries, and she'll be able to give you your own Naviance code with instructions on how to do that. So we can help you with that if you just reach out to us. Next slide. Okay. So in terms of a timeline in 9th grade, our students were already actually introduced in October to one of the features, which is called Road Trip Nation. We love this feature. It's very cool. Students actually give us good feedback about the program and say that when they're able to choose videos that are of career interest to them, it's very specific. And you can look at people that are already in those careers and they talk about why they like it. They talk about how they got there and a couple other points of interest. So we've already introduced that to the 9th grade. And again, we're trying to make those connections that they won't be in high school forever. And so what is that next step? And, you know, Mr. Keaton said it so well about, you know, what are you looking for in that next phase of life? And if it is the next step moving you on to a career, does that college offer it? And what does that career look like? In 10th grade, we do a little bit more in depth with them specifically, getting a little more individualized with our lesson. We'll be doing the 10th grade lesson sometime in the late winter, early spring, where we talk about you know, what is their personality. It's a great personality inventory that Naviance offers. And they provide a report then that talks to the student about what kind of a learner they are. What interests came out of that personality interest survey. And then it connects them with the things that they talk about that they like and things that they might be good at. And obviously we all know as adults that that's the perfect connection and combination when you're looking for a job doing something that you enjoy and something you're pretty good at. And then people say you never work a day in your life, right? So the idea is to help the students look at their personality using this tool and then connecting them with more research, more resources in Naviance about specific careers from that report that is generated. We move on to 11th grade. And the counselors actually are coming up in the beginning of December to be doing a lesson with our 11th grade. We break them up so they are with us. We have our own students in 3 small groups over a period of 3 different days. And in this lesson, we really get more specific and individualized about the actual process of what they could be looking for in their future. So we go through all of the options. You know, we know as adults that there's so many options and many paths to get to the same end point. And so we talk a lot about what you should be looking for in your future, what makes sense for you. And again, Michael touched on so many of those important characteristics of your own self to learn more about you and what's important to you. And we talk about how that connects with finding your fit, which Naviance has wonderful features in it where you can plug in your own aspects of a college that you're interested in and using all the key points that Michael Keaton had mentioned. And then you can do your own search and Naviance will give you another report with many opportunities to look at various colleges and why that might be a good fit for you and your student. The hope is that we'll be doing these lessons and giving the juniors a good solid timeline with what to do moving forward until, you know, senior year of next year in the fall when they're going to be applying to colleges and, you know, looking at all the options and choices. Eventually, the military, could be vocational technical schools, could be going to find a job and then, you know, finding a college fit after that. But again, many of our students look at 2- and 4-year colleges. And so Naviance has a majority of their features are focused on that. And in 12th grade, we're hopeful that by the time your student is a senior or you students out there are seniors that you're sort of familiar with the program at this point. We really hope that you've used it enough that you understand how to log in and the basics of the program and what you're actually looking for. And so when we give you the directions on, you know, how to make your transcript requests and request letters of recommendation and all the important pieces of the application that you're going to need to send through Upper Dublin High School, that you kind of understand the program and know how to navigate it. But of course, we give step-by-step details on how that all works, and we're more than happy. I love what Mrs. Ward said about us being partners in this. I couldn't agree more with that. We're really here to help your student navigate the next steps and what that all looks like. And as 10th and 11th graders is a great part of our job. It's very exciting for us to work with those students. So I am going to turn it over to Mr. Tadio, and he's going to talk about one of our very exciting features, the scattergrams.
Thank you, Mrs. Saxon, and good evening, everyone. So I am lucky enough to present one of the more special features of Naviance, which are called the scattergrams. The reason why these scattergrams are special is because it allows you to see Upper Dublin specific admission data for these colleges. So what you're looking at on the screen right now is a scattergram for Penn State main campus. So I'm going to explain to you what you're looking at. So all data that's plotted on this graph are Upper Dublin graduates, or even some current seniors who have already heard back from their colleges. The vertical axis would be the weighted GPA, and across the bottom, the horizontal axis is standardized test scores. We currently have it at SAT, but you can change that to the ACT scores. On the graph itself, anybody with a green check are students who applied and gained admission to the school. Red X's are students who applied and were denied. And on some graphs, you're going to see circles. And the circles means the student was waitlisted. And those circles can change colors after we get the follow-up from those schools. Now, your son or daughter will be plotted on the graph. You can see them kind of in the middle there. There's a little teal circle. And your student will be plotted on the graph once two things are entered in the system. You have a weighted GPA, which you finished with at the end of last year. And then once we have some type of standardized testing score in the system. So if you're an upperclassman, you might have already taken the SAT or ACT, so you will be able to see yourself plotted in here. If not, just a month or so ago, we took the PSATs, and once we eventually get those scores in and we upload them into Naviance, you'll be able to see your son and daughter if they took that test. Now, the scattergrams are very, very helpful for a lot of different reasons that we'll get into. But keep in mind that while the GPA and standardized test scores are and traditionally were major factors in admission, they're not the only factors in admission, which kind of explains some of the outliers you see in some of these graphs. A couple other reasons why these graphs are super helpful is there are many websites that have different types of graphs that are similar to this, but this is a true apples to apples comparison. These are Upper Dublin students, Upper Dublin curriculum, Upper Dublin GPA, and just when you read it on some other websites, sometimes it could be a little misleading, but this truly is helpful for you and your Upper Dublin student. Another advantage to this is because you can easily see where you stand at that school, whether it's a reach school, a possible school, a likely school, a safety school. And along with that idea, you can start setting academic goals for yourself. If you have a school in mind that you really want to get to, you kind of can see where the GPA and the standardized test score are to gain admission and what you would need to do over your course in high school to improve your chances to gain admission to that said college. So the next slide is a new tool that Naviance has, and all the way at the bottom, the little legend or key, if you actually click on one of those icons, it deletes or hides that group. So some schools like Penn State and other very popular schools get a lot of applicants. Sometimes that graph gets a little messy. So that's just an easier way to clean it up.
I'm so sorry, Mike, I think we're having some technical difficulties.
All right. Well.
Oh, I think you're back on.
Okay, am I back on?
Next slide.
All right, there we go. All right. So the reason why I chose Temple University is because this is one of those likely schools. So you can see where the student is placed in there. Well, you got a lot of green around you. If I was a student that was applying to Temple, I'd feel pretty good about my chances of gaining admission to the school. And then the next slide on the other end of the spectrum, we have University of Pennsylvania. As you may know, and if not, you're finding out now, is an extremely competitive university to get into regarding admission. And if this was a school that I was interested in, I probably would classify this as a reach school, and I know I'd have to kind of up my game a little bit to improve my chances of admission to this school. The last slide has to do with search engines that are Naviance that are for scholarships and enrichment programs. So the scholarships, any scholarships that we become aware of, we enter into Naviance. And enrichment programs are different programs that are offered by organizations or local colleges that allow students to participate in. And some of them are specialized, like if you want to do something for business or theater or engineering. And some other programs are more general, like a pre-college program that would just prepare you for what you would experience in college. I'd like to give a plug to Drexel on this because they do offer some really great programs over the summer that our students have really enjoyed and had some really positive feedback on. So now I'm going to turn it over to the next speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Taddeo. I'm Christopher Brown, and good evening, everyone. Certainly the topic standardized testing sometimes causes more anxiety than excitement about postgraduate planning, but the goal here today is to really provide you with a timeline of when several exams will take place and when's an appropriate time to register for those exams. When it comes to standardized testing, I'll be reviewing two different companies, but also different types of exam, the ACT and College Board. Next slide, please. Okay, so the first exam will apply to all sophomores and juniors, and that is the PSAT. The current junior class was provided with 2 practice PSAT exams last year, and this year all sophomores and juniors were able to sit for the exam. The PSAT itself, it generally takes place in October, and the current sophomore class will have the opportunity to take the exam again next year at our high school building. Next year does have an exam date scheduled for Wednesday, October 12th, 2022. You could go back, please, sorry. The PSATs generally will, the benefit of the PSATs, again, is that this is a practice exam. So the exam itself is not something that's sent to colleges, but really for students to be able to identify where they were if they were to take the SAT at that time. So the PSAT is aligned with the SAT scoring. The highest score you can receive on the PSAT is 1520. And again, really the goal is if a student were to take the SATs on that same day, that is the score that they would receive on the exam. For junior year students who finish with top scores, they can be eligible for the National Merit Scholarship Program. The National Merit Scholarship Program only applies for junior year. And we were informed today that students who took the PSATs will be notified on December 7th through College Board, where they'll be able to log in to see their PSAT exams from October. Next slide, please. The SATs mainly apply to juniors and seniors, senior year. We generally look at the completion of Algebra 2 as one of the indications if a student is ready to sit down for the exam. Most of the content is similar to the PSATs. There's a reading, language, math with, and a math without calculator section. Unlike the PSATs, the SATs may be submitted for a college application process depending on the school's testing policy. It generally takes about 2 weeks to receive your score, and students will be able to take the exam more than once if they're looking at improving their score. Most colleges may provide the ability to superscore. So what that would be is taking your highest score on your math test out of one of the 2 and taking your highest score in the language and combining that as a super score. On the slide, there are upcoming dates for the SATs this year. And again, a student can take the SAT more than once. Next slide, please. The ACTs provides another option to standardized testing that's really comparable with the SATs. Like the ACTs, generally students will take it in their junior year. There are some differences between SAT and the ACT. One noticeable difference, the scoring scale for ACT goes from 1 to 36, whereas the SAT goes to a scale of 1600. Calculators are also allowed for the entire math section for the ACT as opposed to the SAT. And the ACT also does include a science passage section. Most students, like the SAT, may take the exam once or may take the exam more than once with the ability to superscore as well. Next slide, please. All right, so AP courses are generally for sophomore, junior, and senior year. Each AP course offers an AP exam that'll take place in May. AP courses are our most rigorous courses, and they're really designed for students to get a taste of a college level course in high school. So come time course selections for this year, it's important for students to consider their full workload, their teacher recommendations, and if there's an AP course they're interested in, just ensuring that it's a topic that they're also interested in as well. AP courses can have a lot of benefits. One, the course will be reflected on your high school transcript. And two, the AP score does have potential to fulfill college credit depending on the college's credit policy. Next slide, please. So certainly over the past year, there has been a lot of changes with standardized testing. In January, you may have known, College Board announced they would no longer offer SAT subject test and the SAT with essay. As Mr. Keaton indicated earlier, a lot of schools are also adapting a test optional policy. And really what that means is that the student has the option to submit or not submit their test scores. This can be helpful for students who may not be the best test takers, or if they feel like your test score doesn't really reflect your academic ability. Other schools have also a test blind policy, and what that means is that they won't even look or consider your standardized test score for the admission process. As Mr. Keaton also mentioned, feel free to utilize fairtest.org. They will generally continue to update their information year to year for schools that are adopting the test optional policy. Thank you for your time, and with that, I will pass it to Mrs. Hopkins.
Hi guys, I'm going to talk a little bit about navigating a college fair. So a college fair is great because it really brings the colleges to the students, and it helps students learn about colleges and begin connecting with colleges in a much easier format. When we hold our college fair at Upper Dublin, or when we're able to hold our college fair, we have about 120 schools represented. So it really brings a lot of colleges to meet our students. For 9th and 10th graders, it's a great way for them to begin learning about colleges. And for older students, specifically juniors, it gives them a chance to really ask important questions for the colleges so that they can help determine which colleges could be a good fit for them. It also helps when they see that 120 plus schools, it also helps them to see that there are more schools out there than the 20 or so that our students might hear the most about throughout their experience. So it really helps. Can you go to the next slide, please? It helps for students to be prepared and to do a little work ahead of time before they go to a college fair. So many students often go without doing any work, and that can be a mistake. And those are the kids who leave thinking that they didn't really get much out of it. So again, you'll get a lot out of it if you do a little research ahead of time. Ideally, juniors would have already begun researching what they're looking for in a college and have a sense of a few schools at least that they're interested in and can target them at the fair. When they're having a conversation with the college representative, the representative can pretty easily tell if the student's familiar at all with the school, has done any research with the school, and that impression can have a decent impact. So it's helpful for students, if they know that they're going to be meeting with different reps at a college fair, to do some research ahead of time so they can ask thoughtful, researched questions that really relate to what's important to that student. Reps will also want each student to fill out a contact card. So it helps when students come with prepared labels. So they're not spending half their time meeting with the rep filling out that card. They can just stick a label, including their contact information on that card, and just spend more time actually having a conversation with the rep. It's also helpful to bring something to take notes with. Students will think that they'll remember everything, and they won't. Parents won't either. And so bringing a notepad, a pen to take notes is really helpful. It's also likely going to be hot. There's a lot of tables in the room and a lot of people attending. So bringing something to drink, bringing a bottle of water would be helpful. You'll get a lot of materials from colleges. So bringing a bag for all of that material, so you're not navigating or managing all of the materials in your arms as you're trying to take notes. That would be helpful. We also recommend dressing the part, and that doesn't mean dressing up, but it also means not attending the fair with what you wore to practice that afternoon, or attending the fair looking like you just rolled out of bed. So business casual, or think about, what you would wear to dinner out with your grandparent. That would be most appropriate. So let's transition to what you should do at the fair. So when you get to the fair, the first thing you really want to do is get a map of the floor plan. And every college fair provides this, so that you can see where the colleges are that you want to interact with and sort of plan your attack. I recommend going to the popular colleges early because they'll develop a really long line. And so you don't want to be at the end of that line. So try to get there early. And when it's your turn or your student's turn, we want to make sure that your student introduces themselves to the rep before diving into the questions. And while parents traditionally have a lot of questions they want to ask, and you can ask, it's really important that the student leads the conversation. Taking notes could be a great role for the parent if they're there. I also recommend wrapping up the conversation by asking for the rep's business card and thanking them for their time. And while I've talked a lot about the importance of preparing ahead and knowing the colleges that you want to visit, it's really okay to go off script. In fact, I recommend that by visiting some colleges that you haven't heard about or don't know much about. Some of those colleges might have great programs in an area of a student interest. Some of those colleges could be a great fit for them for so many different reasons. So if there's a huge line at the Penn State or Temple table, it's really helpful to visit some other schools that don't have lines. Okay. After the fair, it's helpful to spend some time organizing the notes and materials that you've collected, and then doing more research on the colleges that stood out to your students. They should do more research on majors that they might have learned about that they didn't know existed before, or new characteristics that they learned about certain colleges that might now be more important to them. Following up on those reps that really stood out to them with an email thanking them for their time and asking any additional questions you might have is another great activity to do after a college fair. Okay. So that's pretty much it. If you have any other questions about college fairs, feel free to ask them towards the end. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Mrs. Hopkins, and everyone who was here tonight that presented, all the school counselors. Appreciate your time and your collaboration and your teamwork. I also want to give a special thank you again to Mr. Keaton for joining us and giving advice and your guidance on the college admissions process. At this point, I am going to stop recording and open the floor for some questions.